Hello folks, welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again we are continuing with the interpretation of statute, deeds and documents, right? And we were referring to the internal aid of interpretation. So we have covered a lot of them. There are just 2 or 3 internal aid that are still pending, and we'll cover them up in this particular lecture, right? So in the previous lecture, we have ended our discussion on the discussion of proviso, right? Which was used to create an exception to what has already been stated in the main body, right? So that is where we had ended the previous lecture. Today we move ahead with the discussion of an explanation, right? So on the screen, explanation explains the meaning of the word used in the statute. Oh, how general was that, right? But nevertheless, I will go ahead and interpret it in more detail for you. So an explanation basically is a clarification of the legislative mind, right? What the legislature actually wanted, what did they intend by bringing out the statute is actually contained in the explanation, right? So the explanation goes ahead to explain the meaning of the word. It is different from the definition, right? It is different from the definition. Definition is actually the definitional section, right? They contain specific definition of specific words that are used over and over again and that are prominent word, right? Which are actually an integral part of the entire statute. But all the words are not contained in the definitional sections. So the other words that do not have a definition of their own as provided by the statute, right? And they are rarely used at some places. So for those words and for that specific use, the legislature goes ahead to insert an explanation for the same, right? So if that is given, then we call it an explanation, which is different from the definition which is provided in the definitional section or the clause, right? So understand the point that when we talk about explanation, it is not actually going on to substantively explain the entire provision of a section. No, that job is done by me over here for you, right? I am going on to explain it. So this explanation that I am giving is the explanation of the entire statute, the entire chapter, the entire section, right? But the explanation that is specified or that is given by the legislature is an explanation to a particular word. And why is it provided? Basically to remove the ambiguity that could have been created by the use of the word in context to which it has been used in the statute, right? So its usage, if you read at it, if you go with the literal interpretation or if you apply any rule of interpretation, right, to any particular word, then the meaning becomes ambiguous. You can obtain more than one meaning for that specific word, right? So in that case, what you actually go ahead to do is that you add an explanation. You means not literally you, it's about the legislature. So the legislature adds an explanation to that topic over there, right? So it is always in reference to the section. It does not widen the ambit of the section. It does not go beyond the section to explain something else or to include something else, right? That task is done by the proviso. Explanation does not perform that task. Explanation simply gives you the explanation of the word that has been used. What is the intention of the legislature? Why has the word been used and how should it be interpreted? So it is a direct explanation of that interpretation that should be taken for that specific word in the provision in the section, right? So it neither obstructs the work of the legislature, nor does it take it to a different level, right? That means it does not actually bypass the statute. So whatever is given in the statute, that is explained. It is neither taken beyond, neither is it obstructed. It is explained to the same context for which it has been used, right? And there is no hindrance created in the working of the act because of an explanation, right? So now you understand what an explanation is. It is a simple explanation. Like I am giving you an explanation over here. I'm not taking you anything beyond, right? I'm just including all the relevant facts that are necessary for you to understand the provision, right? I still take up some substances from beyond the text, some examples that is beyond the text, but the explanation actually which is provided by the legislature does not even do that, right? Whatever context have been used over there, whatever words have been used, that has been explained in plain text, that okay, if we did not write something, all those things in the provision, right, that is prefix and that is postfix to that word, then the word would have generally been put in this way. And then you understand, okay, forgetting about the rest of the things, if we just concentrate on the word, then the word means this. Now you include that meaning in the entire statement and then derive the actual meaning of the entire provision over there, right? So now if you try to understand the purpose for which the legislature includes an explanation to a statute, to a section, or to a provision, right, then the basic purpose may be that, for example, say the statute or the section defines a provision, right, but there is something that it actually intended, but the meaning is not conveyed, right? I will not take any example for that, it will be again confusing thing. Just understand that the legislature intended to say something, but the actual meaning is not coming out of what the draftman has drafted, right? So they include an explanation and say that okay, we also intended to include these things, we also intended to mean these things beyond what you can literally interpret out of the text, right? Or if they think that the interpretation goes beyond what they actually intended, then they can also curb it in their explanation, and they can say that okay, with the text which is given in the section, you may construe to go beyond this level, but what we actually intend is up to this level. Only these things will be included. So if anything that you construe beyond this will be null and void. That means we do not intend to include it. That is not the intention of the legislature, right? That is the actual purpose of explanation. If there is any ambiguity that you are not very clear as to what is the meaning, why? Because if you look at it from different directions, then you can gain more than one meaning for the same statute, for the same section, right? So in that case, this explanation will pinpoint the exact meaning that you wanted. The explanation will say that no, forget about the rest of the things, this is exactly what we want to say. Please do not interpret it in any other way, although other interpretations are possible, right? They go on to in detail explain the entire meaning of the provision if the words are not very clear, or if the words have been so typically drafted that people are not able to derive the accurate meaning out of that word. So in support, an explanation is added in simple plain text, which would actually bring out the entire meaning of the section, right? And then finally what happens with the help of the explanation, the main section becomes more meaningful, right? You must have faced that problem when you are reading anything in law, right? The reason why you're taking the class is that when you are reading the plain text, it becomes difficult for you to understand and interpret it, right? And what am I doing is I am providing you with an explanation to the background, but my words are not actually the words of the legislature. In the layman's term, as a teacher, I'm trying to explain it to you, but a similar task is done by the legislature, right? But they do not go into so much detail, they do not contain so much examples, because all those are different things. If they want to give an example, they include an illustration. If they want to deal with the exception, they include the proviso. But if they simply want to explain a particular term, then they would use the term explanation over there, right? Like they give an asterisk mark and at the bottom they explain the entire term. So that is an explanation. Understand? Are you getting it? So what I am explaining, I say I'm giving you an explanation of interpretation of statute, but actually I'm including everything. I'm including the proviso, I'm including the illustration, I'm including the explanation, I'm including the titles, heads, everything, right? So it is not bifurcated. I'm considering it to be in the general term explanation, but the legislature has bifurcated it, and then the explanation, the meaning of the term explanation remains very small and very limited to explaining the exact meaning of any term which is used in the section. That is it, nothing more than that, right? So I hope you're clear with the term explanation now. Okay, so the next thing that we have to cover up again is the schedules. Somebody call it schedule, some call it schedule, right? I don't know what the exact term is, because it is always a difference of your US language and the British language, right? Although we basically follow UK language in the country, sorry, to be precise with it, in UK it is schedule, right? And in US it is schedule. It's not schedule, it's schedule, right? So we will not get to that complicated thing, and we don't follow the US English. In India we follow the UK, the British English, right? So we will term it as schedule and not schedule, right? It sounds so difficult, right? So basically people term it as schedule, right? But it's not schedule in India. If you go by the literal meaning of it, the literal pronunciation of it, going by the law, following the British English, it is schedule. I know it does not make a difference whatever you use, but okay, if you want to be appropriate and if you want to know actually what is the appropriate pronunciation, then I'm giving it to you for your brief knowledge, right? It has nothing to do with the text. Remember the spelling, write it down. Nobody's asking you the pronunciation for that. So, what are schedules in your interpretation of statute, and how are they an aid to the interpretation? Now, schedules are basically the details about the normal details into the sections, the rules, the forms, all these things in a tabular form, right? You must have seen in most of the acts, at the end you are given a schedule. In schedule, section wise you have been given the details. What are the sections, what are the forms included over there, what are the rules that are associated with these sections, right? All those things are specifically drafted in a tabular form, right? And that is appended to the act. And when we say it is appended, means it is attached to the end of the act, right? You must have seen a schedule, right, very often. You will not see it in the textbook that you follow, but you will see it in the Bare Act. So, okay, even if you have not seen it, what happens is it is a table of details which is appended in the act. That means which is added to the end of the act, right? And what are those details? Those are normal details, rules, forms, right, for the working of the policy. What policy? The policy which is underlying that particular section, right? And if there are any particular enactment, then that will also be contained in the schedules. If there are particular rules, you generally know that if an act is enacted this year, the next year there are certain rules to explain them, right? So even those rules are contained in those schedules, right? So they may even go beyond the scope of the section. They contain all the rules, they contain all the substantive enactments that are enacted later on and everything, right? So if you have any confusion, or if you want to actually interpret a section, you go to the schedule and see what are the rules attached to it, what are the forms attached to it, what are the further enactments that are related to it, right? So when you actually go through them, you get an interpretation of the direction into which the actual section is trying to go, right? Because you are getting into further details, further specific details, right? If you're not able to understand what is in your hand, if you're not able to see it and interpret it, you also ask two other people to interpret what is in your hand, right? Those other people are basically the rules, the forms, and the other details that are contained in the schedules. So schedule always support, right, your interpretation. That is going beyond and understanding what else have been enacted, what else have been added, what are the rules, what are the other details, what are the other enactments, all those things. If you want to find, schedule is one place that will give you all those details, right? And as I say, it is appended to the act. That means it is a part of the act, right? Something which is added at the end but becomes an integral part. So you will never read the act alone. So whenever you are reading an act, you will also refer to the schedules, and what does the schedule say about that particular section. That is how you get into a complete analysis of an act, right? If there is any ambiguity in any word, any sentence, any section, then the schedules may help you to remove that ambiguity, right? They may help you to get the correct interpretation and the correct intention of the legislature, right? So now what happens is, when we are talking about some other details that are added, right, when we say that the schedules may cover other enactments as well, so at some point of time we can easily presume that what the schedules are saying right, they may be beyond or they may be different than what the enactment says, what the section is saying. Right? Why? Because schedules are including the other rules, the forms, the other enactments as well, and those amendments, right, they may be a little different or they may deviate from the original enactment. So in that case, what do? In that case, you will try to find out a midway. You will try to harmonize those schedule and the original enactment that you have, right? But at any point of time, if they are at completely different tangents that do not meet, right, if you're not able to draw a common line between the two, what you do is you follow the enactment, right? Why? Because schedules are basically an aid to your section, right? They are aid to interpretation of the section. They are not the actual section. And if there is some major amendments like that, which are actually amended, if the act is amended, if a section is amended, then that will already be included in the section, right? The older section lapses and the new amendment comes into play. So in that case, obviously you will go with the amendment. But if there is some other enactment that is included in the schedule separately, right, but which is not a complete amendment of the section, understanding? So in that case, you will go with the section and not the schedule, if you're not able to harmonize. But if you're able to harmonize it, that is the best way out of it, right? So now you understand what schedules are. At least you got the feeling what schedules are and how they can be used. That is well and good for you, because you haven't been asked questions on schedule so far, right? Proviso, provisions, right? These things have been asked quite a number of times, right? Now, the last thing that you have, read the statute as a whole. So, I have told you also, while we were also discussing the rules of interpretation, right, that the statute has to be read on the whole. You will not consider it in isolation. You will not consider a section in isolation. Okay, this would mean this. No. Why? Because it is a part of the main schedule. It is a part of the main, sorry, not the schedule, part of the main act, right? So it is going in the direction of the act. So whenever you are reading it, right, and basically we talked about it when we were discussing the rules of harmonious construction, that there may be a specific thing, right, for which two different provisions or two different sections in two different chapters are talking about, and they may be at different tangents. So that is when you try to harmonize the situation, right? And we took an example that one place we have the powers of the director and the other place we have the concept of the loans and investment, right? So the powers of director, they talk something different about the loans and investment, whereas the real section of loans and investment, they talk about something different. I won't go on getting into those sections, right? It will take a lot of time if I get exactly into what the section says. Just understand, I'm giving you an example, right? You can consider it to be an hypothetical example. Do not use it in the examination, right? But I'm just giving you an example so that you understand what I mean to say, which has already been explained earlier also, right? So your section where you have the powers of directors talks about something else regarding the loan, and the section of the loan and investment talks about something else regarding the loan, right? So you have two different sections that are a part of two different chapters, but they are talking about the same thing, that is the loan and investment. One is talking from the point of view of the directors and the other from the point of view of the original loan and investment. So what do? You cannot reduce any one of them to null and void, to the dead letter, right? You have to bring out a harmonious construction. You'll have to connect the dots over there, right? So that was about harmonious construction. But what did we learn in harmonious construction? That the entire statute has to be read as a whole. No express provision will be applicable unless and until you have checked all the other provisions. Are there any other provision talking about the same thing? If yes, then you will have to collaborate the two. You will have to bring out a harmonious interpretation of both of them, right? So on the screen, elementary principle that construction of a statute is to be made of all its parts taken together. Yes, ultimately, right, if you leave out certain sections, your statute is not complete. So what the statute wants to say, what the legislature wants to communicate via a statute, will only be completely communicated if you have completely been through the entire statute. Right? So in the first place, when you come across something, you interpret it according to the section, and next again if you come across the same thing, you again interpret it in somewhere else. Then how do you actually go about with it? Which one will you apply? Right? That is a question. That is why it said that if you have something like that, right, you will have to check the entire statute. If there are some contradicting provisions, or if there are 2 or 3 provisions talking about the same aspect, then you will have to harmonize them. Right? You cannot reduce any one of them to the dead letter unless and until any of the provision contains the word like notwithstanding. So they say we would apply notwithstanding anything contained in the Companies Act or any other act for the time being in force, this will be applied like this. If any such statement is included, then please do not include any other statement. Apply it straightforward. Why? Because it says notwithstanding anything. Right? Or if something says without prejudice to something like this, that means you will not disturb the other provision. Apart from that, you can apply this. So these are the sections that gets connected, right? So if they are getting connected, you will have to take the effect before interpreting it. Are you getting what I mean to say? Right? That you will have to take the entire effect of it. So that is all about the internal aid of the interpretation of statute as given by your material. But in some books we also have an inclusion of the term punctuation. Although punctuation, they do not give you any references, right? But punctuation, they help you to analyze where the breakage is, what is the flow. So that is basically a part of literal interpretation, right? Where you go by the grammatical meaning, where you have to deal with the language English, right? You know what punctuations are, right? Punctuations that can be used in the statute are the comma, semicolon, full stop, all these things. Right? And they are also important. You know where the break is. So that means the prior part, the part prior to that semicolon or the comma or the full stop is one part, and the part that starts after that is the second part. So you have to interpret each of them individually. Right? So you know basically the rules of English. I don't think I need to get in detail about that, but just remember a word that yeah, punctuations are also an aid to interpretation as per some of the authors. Right? So you remember, so what are the what are the internal aids of interpretation? So first you have to understand that internal aid means something that is contained in the act itself, right? We're talking about those aids that are found within the text of the statute. So what are they? Just remember the names once more. It is the title, which is short and the long title, the preamble, which is similar to the long title, the heading and title of the chapters, which is the combination of sections, the marginal note, which is actually the name of the section, the definitional section, section 2, section 5, that gives you a definition of specific words, the illustrations, which are actually the examples appended with the section, that means added to the end of the section, the proviso, to clarify the doubt, to bring out an exception, to demonstrate something further, explanation, explaining the particular term, schedules, tables added to the end of the act, end of the entire act. Reading the statute as a whole is again a part of your rules of interpretation, and the punctuation, that is the comma, full stop and the semicolon. Right? How are they used are very important for you to understand. So do you know what are the kinds of questions that are put forward to you? Right? Like in 2011 they asked, explain the importance of preamble and proviso being internal aid to interpretation directly, right? And you can explain it. Right? Then 2009 they said, many a times proviso is added to a section of the enactment. Explain the function of such proviso, and I have already given it to you, right? If you refer to the screen, this one, right? Then this thing that has just appeared, right? These are the 5 factors. This is what you have to write over there, right? So I think you can do very well with that. There's no problem with that, right? Other sections are like explain the headings, title, effect of proviso, again preamble, marginal notes, right? They have been asked a lot of time about the effect of proviso and the preamble, right? So be consistent with that. Keep them on your fingertips, right? Then they also say how do you interpret the word includes and means, what do they denote, right? Also give an example for the same, right? Then what are the internal aids of interpretation? If that is a general question, you have to write that those are the aids that the court has, or those are the references that the court takes up from the act itself, from the text of the statute, from the text of the act itself, right? And then you give on all the 10 or 11 aids to internal interpretation, right? Just remember it. What are they? In the flow, according to the number: title, preamble, heading, marginal note, definitional section, illustration, proviso, explanation, schedules, reading the statute on the whole, and punctuation, right? Just remember, it is an important topic. I have been asked 7-8 times in the examination. Don't take it leniently. And this is also something that is making you smarter, right? When you talk to somebody else and you say, yeah, refer to the preamble, something is written over there, then they know, oh my god, how does this guy know so much? They don't even know what is a preamble, and you know that, yeah, the preamble will also explain it. You get an edge. Trust me, not everybody in your CA final will go through this chapter. I have seen a lot of my friends leaving that chapter in the examination. I don't know for what cause. Just because they don't have some time to given, right? Even if you do not go through all my lectures, they will take some time, right? I think overall we take 5-7 hours for this chapter. Why? Because we are going into the detail, right? And I don't want you to give 5-7 hours at a stretch. While going to office, coming back from office, watch one lecture daily. In a week, you will not even understand, but you will have seeped in the entire chapter, right? So these are for students who are well in advance preparing for the examination, but students who are going for the crash course, right, this will be a little difficult task because we are teaching it in detail. But if it's a specific chapter you want to know, you can go with the flow. Sit down for 4-5 lectures a day, you will complete it. That is, 4-5 lectures means around 2 hours, right? Not more than that. Okay, so with that we will be concluding this lecture over here. In the next lecture we'll take up the external aids of interpretation, and then after that we'll do with the deeds and documents, the interpretation of the deeds and documents, right? So they should not take a lot of time. Very small topics that are pending. We'll soon be done with this chapter and move on to the next. Okay with that? So please stay tuned for the next lecture. Until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you and bye-bye.